Hello, everyone. Welcome to On the Move, a show where we share transportation, sales, and marketing success stories. I am Jennifer Karpus-Romain, Executive Director at the Transportation Marketing and Sales Association, which is a trade nonprofit educating and connecting marketing and sales professionals in transportation and logistics. Today on the show, I have Jason Green, who is president at Faye. How you doing, Jason?
I'm doing great. How are you doing?
I'm doing very well. Happy to have you on the show. It has been a few years since Faye has been engaged in TMSA. So for those who are unfamiliar with the company, can you give us a quick overview of what the company does and how it supports the industry?
Yeah, totally. We help mid-market organizations wrangle technology for their sales, service, and marketing departments. And we have a deep expertise across CRM and CX technologies and software that allows us to do that. And we're one of the top systems integrator and reseller partners for a variety of different vendors in the space.
Awesome. And what about transportation excites you guys the most as a industry?
I think transportation for me excites me a lot because it's not something people think about a lot in their day to day. They don't think about the goods moving around on the roads and the rail and in boats, and they're just happy that their Amazon package shows up on time. And I think it's a huge part of the economy. And there's a lot of unsung heroes working tirelessly day in and day out to ensure the economy moves.
Absolutely. That's how we feel in our space as well. And love talking about how to do that more successfully. And one of the tech pieces that is such a hot topic right now is the topic of AI. And implementation of AI or really any type of tech can feel really overwhelming. So, how do you guys advise companies to identify and prioritize AI projects that offer quick wins to get things really moving?
Yeah, it's a great question. We tend to view AI as a bit more profound of a change on society as a whole. We view it as a change to the very nature of work versus looking at it as a tool or technology. I mean, there's definitely AI tools, there's definitely technology that is underpinning and associated with AI, but we find it very useful to look at this more broadly. And from there, it's easy to start identifying low-hanging things that you can do to get some quick wins. So just an example would be rewriting emails, having a AI agent for tone and voice of your brand that you can run content and marketing and sales content, but also replies for support through it, and even emails and communication from the finance department. So these are like quick types of things you can do with AI that just kind of scratch the surface. And then we'll get into it more, but just having like an AI posture around how you approach it strategically in the organization as well.
Mhm. I know one of the things that we've seen, we do a benchmarking study every other year. And when we got that results in at the end of last year, we saw that there's still a lot of companies that are really hesitant to embrace AI of any kind. And how do you advise them to really embrace the power of it, create proper protocols, parameters for safety and security purposes, but still utilize the technology that's available for them?
Yeah, so it's interesting because this is coming up with a lot of organizations and owners of businesses that I speak to on a daily basis. And my answer to them is you don't really have a choice. You don't get to choose to ignore electricity or refrigeration or antibiotics. AI is here and it's making a profound change. It's possibly part of Industrial Revolution 4.0, which is something that has come up, and kind of similar to when you really had smartphones come into the picture, and people are like, oh, you can't use your personal device. Well, people were using their personal devices; they're bringing them in anyways. And so I think one of the best things you can do as an organization is make sure you deploy a tool that aggregates the various LLMs available, so that instead of individuals using their own individual subscriptions to ChatGPT or Claude or Gemini, You're controlling it in one central portal, and there's multiple tools on the market for this that you can deploy, and that at least you have some modicum of control over where people are going to use AI. I think that's one part of it. Second part is also developing a strategy for training your entire staff on how to use AI effectively, and then also how to use it in a safe way. And then your IT department has to develop a posture around security and compliance, just like they do for any other piece of software or database or any other piece of IT infrastructure.
Absolutely. That's also, I remember with our benchmarking study, we talked about it at one of our events. And I said, like, okay, who's in the room knows how their team is actually using AI? And if you don't have the answer to that, that's really scary because
Right.
you don't know what they're putting in. And especially if you aren't setting those security protocols, I'm sure your team is probably using ChatGPT just a little bit. And if you're not paying for it, it means they're using the free version that is putting in the information anywhere it wants to. So like having those proper parameters and accepting the reality of it, I think is really good advice.
Yeah, 100%.
And so if a company is starting out in this AI journey, what's the first step that they should take?
It's a great question. So the first thing a leadership team or owners of a business need to decide is they have to decide what they believe about AI. And what I mean by that is, do they feel it's hype and it's overblown and it's whatever, a nothing burger? Do they believe it's something similar to when on-premise computing went to the cloud, and so you had all these SaaS applications and cloud computing and this type of infrastructure? Do they believe it's more profound? Do they think it's 1994? It's right before the internet, and it's a massive, profound change that's coming. You're gonna start seeing new business models similar to how we saw Uber, not taxi. We saw Netflix, not Blockbuster, right? And these things that just simply weren't possible without the internet. Or do you believe it's even more profound? Do you believe this is 1882 and the first homes in the United States are being wired for electricity? And so depending on what you believe, and you need to have some alignment on what you believe is going to direct how you develop a strategy and approach AI. So step one is alignment at the leadership level about what you believe.
I think that's really good advice. I think that alignment is always important. That's a soap up I get on all the time here. So really great. And for the transportation industry specifically, what are some examples of then AI driven initiatives that have then delivered some immediate value to them?
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of different examples. I think in the sales arena, logistics companies are, sometimes they struggle. How do we prioritize which leads to focus on? Which accounts do we spend time calling into? Which RFPs do we respond to? And I think implementing AI in an iterative way that can help analyze the historic win patterns, customer behavior signals, any type of current engagement data and score opportunities based on likelihood to close, things like that. You could see a lot of improvements in win rate increases, reducing the length of the sales cycle. And so that's one example in the sales arena. I think for customer service, um, you know, example could be like a freight forwarding company experiencing a high call volume that's having a lot of repetitive, like, where's my package? What's the status of this? What's going on? And so having automation that routes these, augmenting the routing to be more intelligent with AI, to route it across different channels. And then even farther than that, taking the type of common things that are coming up and then just trying to improve the service process before you even get to that point. That's also, an example of specific for transportation logistics. And then on the marketing side, if you're struggling with your messaging, you might have generic messaging. We've seen that where a company has generic messaging, their brand is kind of generic. It's not really resonating across their customer segments, which happen to be quite diverse. Using AI as your thought assistant, as a thought helper to develop more tuned content for your different segments, a more cohesive and resonating overall brand voice and tone and story, and then personalized content for like different accounts you might have in that are in different industries that you're servicing. So those are three of many different examples.
Yeah, I think that third one really resonates with me because I think a common mistake I see with people in their sales and marketing is they want to say, oh, we can do everything, we can do it all. But people don't really care if you can do it all. They care what you can do specifically for them. They want to know that you are paying attention to their business and their needs. And so if you need to do multiple campaigns, multiple initiatives across different segments, one easy way to kind of get at least the thought starting is to use those AI platforms and be able to diversify that a little bit, because you do want to personalize it. You want them to know, no, we can do it all, but we really can do this and we do this really well. And this is how we can do it for you.
Yeah, totally.
What are some of the long-term AI strategies that companies can be utilizing, or what are you seeing that people are starting to implement that are more than kind of those quick wins, little things that they could do?
Yeah, so I'm going to go back to what I was saying, how it depends what you believe. And if you believe it's profound, um, it's changing the nature of work. And so a place to start is with your org chart or accountability chart, or both, depending on if what you're looking at. And start thinking about how your org chart's going to change. What are the boxes that you're going to have on your org chart that are agents? Because that's the world I believe we're going into. We're going into a place where your org chart is going to have humans filling roles, and then it's going to have AI, an agentic layer filling different spots on the org chart. And so starting to think about how you can augment different people in different roles is one thing. Starting to think about how your business model could potentially change is another thing. On the topic of the business model, it's really interesting because a lot of transportation logistics companies have a lot of data, that they don't necessarily know how to unlock. And maybe they haven't unlocked it because it hasn't been useful to their particular business of products and services. But with AI, there's interesting things they could be doing that maybe cut across other industries that they're not even thinking about. So exploring and thinking through things that are really kind of far out there today, but about to be very possible tomorrow, which would be like kind of when you had the internet with Blockbuster video, and then all of a sudden you've got Netflix, and just trying to think through, create, what that means in the future. Thinking about also the future, how you're going to have these different agents potentially talking to each other, communicating with each other. You could have entire functions in the business filled by 9 out of 10 are agents speaking with each other and producing generative results. And then I would say the other thing that's really important to be thinking about is to be prepared for massive model leaps. And what I mean by that is you have the LLMs, you have the GPT, you have Claude, you have Gemini, you have Llama, you have more. And every month, every few weeks, a new model seems to be coming out. And you have to be in a place where across the organization, across all the roles and all the functions, you're using AI. And it might not work right now. It might work okay. It might work less good or as good as a human. But you have to have these motions happening, because July 15th, a new model might be released that suddenly is completely transformative for a particular function that today is like, well, it can't really do it. But then suddenly July 15th, it's like, oh, wow.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's true. And I think, early adopters of new types of tech, you're then able to move and scale differently, and you don't want to be behind. So even if you can't visualize exactly where it could go, at least understanding the basics of it will take you further.
Yeah. And the thing is, if you look at something like electricity or the internet, you had a huge amount of infrastructure that had to be put physically in the ground or in the air and wires for any of it to be used. And now with this is moving so quickly that the infrastructure is kind of there already. to be able to start using it. And so as an organization, you gotta be prepared for fast moving
Mhm.
changes here.
Absolutely. And you talked a little bit about how there's different ways that AI can be utilized. We have sales and marketing, but also that, customer support, customer satisfaction. How can AI driven insights, how can companies be using AI technology to really predict and address potential challenges? Because I think that's a huge area where AI can help.
Yeah, so I think in customer service or customer satisfaction, it can both help on the predictive side, so like you were saying, predicting issues, and it can also help on the generative side by generating strategy and potential things to execute on, to just become more competitive and compete better on the service side. So I think being able to analyze huge volumes of data, tickets, messages to and from clients, text messages, emails, routing data, load data, all this type of stuff can be fed in and analyzed to produce insights that could be interesting, could be not, but they could be very interesting, which is why you should try to do that. Um, Tone and voice. So, for example, having the having customer service group make sure all the emails that they're emailing back, they're really doing it in a way that's uniform for the company. Analyzing the messages from clients to understand how they're feeling and the tone and the words that they're using. And so I think that's just a couple of the ways that you could use it to predict and address challenges. I like the idea of putting together some sort of digital board of advisors in the context of customer service to help you with strategy and as a sounding board for things that you're thinking about trying. So you might want to implement something new in customer service. And if you have like an AI board set up, you could ask that question and see what they say, which in some ways seems completely crazy that we're talking about this, but this is the world we live in. So,
Mhm. I think it would be incredibly helpful for, I mean, you talked about it a little bit, looking at the overall data, but like sentiment analysis on a call. Like I was just on a customer service call where I had to talk to the representative for 30 minutes. That I was put on hold like 7 times. And then they forwarded me to the manager and he asked me how he could help me. And I almost lost my mind. I'm like, I've literally sat with your representative for 30 minutes and you don't even know what is wrong, like why I'm on this call. And he's like, well, we have to ask these questions. I'm like, okay, well then be like, hey, let me verify this is you or something. But like, I feel like on those calls, it's like if a load is missing or if there's some type of issue with a truck or things like that, like I feel like our customer service reps being able to know exactly the sentiment of the person they're about to handle before that comes in would be incredibly valuable for our teams.
well, and I think, the, your competitors are going to figure this AI stuff out for their business.
Hmm.
And it's not a matter of they're going to implement a CRM or some marketing campaign or CX tool that helps them iterate a slight bit better as a company. They're going to figure this out in a way that makes them competitive 100-fold. And so you as an organization, you have to be working in AI. You have to be figuring out how this makes you uber competitive because A, your competitors will, and B, your clients are going to expect a level of service that is really, really high going forward because
Hmm.
they're going to be getting it from everywhere else.
Hmm.
Because
Yep.
people, yeah,
Yeah, and we're constantly talking about how it's a saturated market and everyone's selling and trying to figure out what the differentiators are and how can we better target our customers and better support our customers. And there's a whole bunch of solutions that are out there if we embrace them.
yeah, 100%.
Do you see any misconceptions about AI in logistics that you think need to be addressed today to make for like a better tomorrow?
Yeah, I think there's definitely some misconceptions. One of them being this idea it's got to be kind of this all or nothing transformation. Most things we've seen are start small, they start targeted, and they iterate and expand. Their misconception is around it being a tool or a technology versus an actual change in the nature of work, that you can just do an AI project, but it's really about getting your staff AI certified, AI proficient, and embracing it on a minute, an hour to hour basis in their day to day. Another misconception is around AI being this massive cost cutting and headcount reduction thing. But it's actually really about augmenting your staff to make them superheroes. We're not seeing headcount reduction with clients. We're seeing them make their existing staff do more and do it in such a way that each person on the staff who really embraces AI, really knows how to use it, becomes this almost superhero in the organization. And so really kind of interesting what we're seeing in that regard. And it's important, that the staff, that the workforce really understands that you're embracing AI to help them and not eliminate their job, because they're not going to want to use AI if they think it's going to eliminate their job. And so this is part of really making sure at a cultural and values level that organizationally you're embracing it and being AI first, and the company understands what's going on. Sometimes I think companies think you need a lot of data scientists or massive investments to do this type of AI work, and you don't. The barriers to entry and do work in AI are much lower than that. And the notion that AI is only for big companies, right? In fact, I think AI offers a real interesting value proposition for the smaller and mid-market organizations, allowing smaller organizations to do way more than they could normally do, which allows them to compete with larger companies, which is pretty cool.
Absolutely. And Faye will actually be coming to TMSA Elevate this year to talk more about this topic, to actually do a demo presentation talking about how you can future-proof your transportation and logistics company by upskilling your workforce with AI for that immediate ROI, which I think is incredibly important. All the things that we're talking about today, it's been a few years since Faye has come spoken at a TMSA event. What can attendees expect from that session?
Yeah, I mean, one of the things we typically are doing in those types of sessions is getting in the weeds. It's not just fluffy stuff or high level or 30,000 feet. We get in the weeds. We go over some technical things. We show some tools. Probably will be interactive, giving you an opportunity to do some experiments and try some different things out. I mean, our goal is to make it really useful to the audience, so they walk away having learned something and not being sorry that they came. So that's what we're looking to do in these type of sessions.
Yeah, we're really excited for it. This will be part of the demo track that TMSA is doing this year. This is our first ever demo track that we've done. And part of it is because we know that there's a lot of technology out there on the market, and our members, our attendees need to see how to actually use it. So we're really excited to have you guys back doing that session. Elevate this year is June 8th through 10th in Austin, Texas. And you can register, as you can see down here, at events.tmsatoday.org. So really excited about that session and for our demo track and debuting it this year. I did want to pivot a little bit to have a different kind of conversation with you now. And because I feel like as humans, as business professionals, we don't always get an opportunity to publicly recognize people who have changed your professional life and the trajectory of your life. And so I feel like anyone who's listened to this podcast or who has met me through TMSA over the past 3.5 years have heard the very engaging, wonderful story of I came to TMSA as a member, and I then felt the call to lead when I knew that the previous leadership was leaving. And I left my company that I was working for. And it's this great story, super motivational for TMSA. But I don't always talk about how hard it was to leave that company, and specifically the boss behind that believed in me in a way that no one else had, and gave me the space to learn and grow and tackle the world in a way that no one else had. And that person was you. And we met 8 years ago when I had just had a baby and I wanted to work, but I didn't want to work full time. And you found me on Upwork and you were looking for a full time digital marketing specialist. And I was like, yeah, no, I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to work full time and I want to work from home, but I want to tackle this role. And I think we talk a lot about employee engagement and how to get the most from our employees. And at the very base of that, I think believing in people and allowing them to meet you where they are in the moment is really important. And I look back on my career over the past 8 years and what I've been able to accomplish. And I don't think I would be able to lead in the way that I do or lead at all if it wasn't for you taking a chance on me back then. So I wanted to publicly thank you for that and acknowledge that here on the podcast today.
Well, thanks. That was really kind words and nice of you to say. I mean, you had the time, you had a lot of energy, and you're ready to go. And I'm glad we brought you on. And I think a lot of it is about showing up. And I think too much people just kind of give up or don't show up, and um, people don't necessarily take the agency they have. And that, is just really, really important. So, yeah, I'm glad I was able to help you early on.
Yeah. And I think part of that, especially looking back then, is we look at work in a certain way. And a lot of times it has to be one way. And everywhere I'd worked previously was very like a 9 to 5, you have to come to the office every day environment. And I don't thrive in those environments. I need to come downstairs and have my coffee and just work and not talk to people for a couple hours. And I thrive there. And so I always really appreciated that yes, I mean, obviously I just had a baby too. So I didn't want to work full time. And then eventually I got to full time, but like you met me where I was at the time and helped me grow up. And I feel like that isn't talked about enough in our professional environments either. Like sometimes people can't do exactly what you're looking for in the moment, but they have the qualities or skill sets you could be looking for if you just open your eyes a little bit more. And so I think that's really important to discuss and talk through too, because yes, people like look at me now as like the leader of TMSA, but had I not had that opportunity to grow at my pace at that time, I wouldn't have gotten here.
Yeah, there's a lot of parts of society that are kind of outmoded in the sense that they haven't caught up to the current age. And that whole idea of 9 to 5 in an office, Monday to Friday, is really, it's outmoded. I'm not saying in an absolute sense it should never be that, or sometimes it doesn't have to be that, or some roles it shouldn't. But when you're running a company, and when you need to have people in the right seats and the right roles, and you're putting a team together, it's not always going to be perfect in terms of the conditions. And so if you find people that you believe are capable and can fill certain roles and responsibilities a certain way, if it makes sense, you should consider trying to make it work, especially for women who have just had children or child. And that whole situation doesn't necessarily lend itself very easily to 9 to 5 in an office Monday to Friday. And I think that to me made sense because I had a small kid at the time. And so I was seeing that in real time. And at the time we were about to have our second kid. And so I was just like, it made sense to me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I was really appreciative of that. And then just allowing, I'm a person who knows what I know, but I want to learn more. And I think as leaders, it can be hard to let people grow without like micromanaging them or figuring it out. So I always appreciated that as well. And then when people ask me now, like, what do you think is the superpower of a leader? I think that listening is the biggest thing that we can do, because too often the leader is the one that's talking all the time. and if we take a step back and listen to our team? And I was thinking of that answer when I gave it. I actually was in this conversation last week at an industry event. And I think part of that goes to, I had a boss a long time ago that would ask me how I was when he would like walk by every day, and he would never actually listen to the answer. And with you, I worked virtually for you for the 4 or 5 years wherever we worked together. And you could always tell when I was mad, because when I talk a lot, but when I'm mad, I go quieter and I think through my answers. But you could tell that over the phone. And I thought that was really impressive. And I think through that now as a leader myself, like how my employees respond to questions, or like if I ask them how they are, is there a pause or a huff or whatever that was? But I could out like, and you would, so like we would talk very fast all the time, but like it would always be in those moments that you would pause and be like, okay, no, like what's really going on? Like, how are
Yeah.
how do we? And I always thought that was really cool because yeah, I had managers that I saw every day and could never pick that up. But like you could tell that when I'm mad, I am more
Well, I
thoughtful.
think, yeah, that's really interesting observation, and I think part of that, I think it's part of it's because when you have people working distributed, you need to be able to understand cues that you don't get because you're not in person, and so you have
Mhm.
to pay attention to how they're saying things, what they're saying, what time of day. Are they at home about to have dinner and you're starting to have a debate about some work topic? Is their spouse, like, saying, "Hey, get off the phone?" Like, you need to rethink what's going if you wanna have a conversation about whatever you're having at that moment. So, um, yeah, look, I mean, when you lead, you have to really give your your team space. They have to be able to grow. You can't just you're not gonna grow very much if you're just ordering everybody around. People have to think for themselves.
Absolutely. And yeah, I just wanted to take some time here in the interview since I had you on the show to like go down memory lane and really walk through that. And because I have told those stories privately, and people listening to this are probably like, oh, this is that guy that she talks so highly of. So now they can have a name and a face to you. And so appreciative of our time and excited that you guys have come back into TMSA and coming to talk things. I'm excited too because people have been asking me CRM, CX questions for the past 3 years
Yeah.
because they still think it's important and talk about. So excited to have you guys back. And that takes us to the last question of the show that I ask everybody who comes on. And if you could go back in time and advise a younger Jason anything, and that's personally or professionally, when would you go back to and what would you tell him?
So I think there's a few things I would tell my younger self. Let's say I go back to myself when I'm like 20 or 21 or something. I would first tell them to remind myself that time is your most valuable asset. Like when you're young, you're a time billionaire. You're like the richest person on earth when you're young because you have so many minutes ahead of you. And I think to just think through how you're spending your time and how you're moving the ball forward on various dreams that you have. Um, and things take time, and you should try not to expect everything to happen within a very short time. You should try to plan out for longer periods of time for things to happen that you want to have happen. I think another thing that I really would have pushed my younger self is to find and maintain a formal mentor relationship with someone who can mentor you. I mean, I've had
Mhm.
people that I consider have mentored me per se, but not in a formal way. And I think one of the greatest things you could do for yourself, really at any age, but especially we're talking to my younger self, find a mentor or multiple mentors to advise you and help you understand the different arenas of your life. Um, and then in terms of business, your career, just in business, focus on providing value, whether that's to the client, to your boss, to your company, to your colleagues. Just provide value, really good value, and everything else will follow. Um, it's provide value and always show up.
I think that's all really good advice. I even like when you talk about the mentorship and the different facets of life, because that's something that I've come to terms with is that you can have a mentor for like 6 different things that are going on, and they'll all give
100%.
different perspectives. Like, you don't have to just
100%.
have one guide that gets you through everything. So I think that's really good
Yeah,
advice.
I think people only I mean, at least I was only thinking about mentorship usually in the context of, like, business, but there's multiple areas of your life,
Mhm.
and, having someone who can help you is why not? Why not do it that way versus having to spend a lot of time learning it for yourself? Accelerate that timeline.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much for coming on the show today and all that you have done for me. Anyone watching the show that wants to catch next week, we will be interviewing Tammy Richter, who is the Vice President of Event Operations at South by Southwest, who will also be taking the stage at TMSA Elevate. So we are excited to have her come on the show and excited to have Faye back into TMSA. Thank you for joining us. Have a good one.
Thank you. Take care.